With only a few games left to play in the regular season and conference championship games approaching quickly, the Heisman talk is in full hype mode right now. So with that, let's look at the 5 favorites and talk about reasons they should win the Heismans and reasons they may not win the Heisman this year. Now, this is not my personal Heisman list. We are going off of the Heisman odds right now. So we're taking the 5 players with the highest odds to win the Heisman this season after week 12. So if your personal favorite isn't on here, don't come after me. This is not my Heisman list. This is the odds makers Heisman list. With that said, let's get into it. 5th in the odds for Heisman, we got Gunnar Stockton. Starting with the reasons that Gunnar Stockton may win the Heisman, we have number 1, Georgia is good. And I know the Heisman is an individual award, not a team award, and wins are not a quarterback stat. But the guy that is leading a good football team is always going to get the nod over the guy that's leading a bad football team if they're comparable when it comes to the Heisman. Now, that's not to say that Gunnar is not putting together a fairly good season. He is 8th in completion percentage right now. He is 8th in the country in completion percentage. And not only that, but he has only thrown 3 interceptions. Gunnar Stockton is very safe with the ball. He's not risking interceptions or incompletions on most of his throws. And surprisingly enough, Gunnar Stockton also has 8 rushing touchdowns on the year, something he is not known for doing. So when you take a guy who's on a very good football team, a team that is 4th in the country, you give him a good completion percentage, a low number of picks, and a surprisingly good running game, of course he's going to be high up on the Heisman list. But Gunnar Stockton does have some things working against him, and that is he is 45th in total passing yards, 47th in passing yards per game. He is not throwing for a lot of yards, and the Heisman does rely on stats a lot of the time, so he is not putting up Heisman stats at all. When there's 46 guys that are throwing the ball for more yards than you are, then you're probably not going to win the Heisman. And while that's the biggest reason he's not going to win, it's not the only reason. He's also tied for 24th in passing touchdowns. So not only is he not throwing for a lot of yards, he's not throwing for a lot of touchdowns either. And with Gunnar Stockton, it's not like he's had a Heisman moment. He only has 1 game above 300 yards. Think about that. Only 1 time this season has Gunnar Stockton thrown for more than 300 yards. At 4 in the Heisman odds, we got Diego Pavia, the quarterback at Vanderbilt. Now, Vanderbilt is 9-2 on the year, and that is not a college football playoff contender. They more than likely will not make it to the college football playoffs with how good the SEC is, or I should say, with the records that are in the SEC this year. But 9-2 is still a heck of a year for Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is usually the punching bag of the SEC, so a 9-2 season with 1 game to play is a phenomenal season for Vanderbilt. And the biggest reason that Vanderbilt is this good this year is because of Diego Pavia. And when you at quarterback are making your team go from the punching bag of the SEC to worst case 9-3 season, you're going to be up for Heisman. Diego Pavia plays very composed at quarterback. In fact, he's 11th in the country in completion percentage. And Pavia has only thrown 5 interceptions. So the same thing that we said about Gunnar, being safe with the ball, Diego Pavia has that too. But I think the arguments against outweigh the arguments for. Diego Pavia is 30th in total passing yards and 31st in passing yards per game, not putting up Heisman numbers in the passing yards categories. And he's tied for 15th in passing touchdowns, so not putting up any good stats in the passing touchdowns category. And while he does have double the number of 300-yard games as Gunnar Stockton does, that's still only 2. 1 doubled is 2. So Diego Pavia only has 2 games above 300 yards, not good enough to win the Heisman. But neither Gunnar Stockton nor Diego Pavia are sitting at the best odds to win the Heisman from their conference. That goes to number 3 on the list, Marcel Reed. Now, the 2 first points we made about Gunnar Stockton and Diego Pavia. Gunnar Stockton leading one of the best teams in the country, and Diego Pavia is the sole reason that Vanderbilt is where they're at, can both be applied to Marcel Reed. He is the reason that Texas A&M is playing as good as they are right now. Marcel Reed has Texas A&M sitting alone atop the SEC with no losses. And not only that, but Marcel Reed had his Heisman moment last week. Texas A&M enters the second half down 27 points to South Carolina in a game that they were heavily favorited in. But Marcel Reed reminded everybody that football has 2 halves and you have to play a full game. And he had 439 yards and 3 touchdowns to bring A&M back, completes a 28-point comeback to beat South Carolina. Now, despite the 2 interceptions in that game, that is a Heisman game for Marcel Reed, a game that they needed to win, a game that everyone thought they were going to lose at halftime. Shane Beamer, the coach for South Carolina, goes into halftime celebrating, pumping the crowd up. Marcel Reed says not so fast. Now, the stats for Marcel Reed are not top tier stats, but they are good enough to win the Heisman when he's playing like he's playing. 17th in total passing yards, 18th in passing yards per game, and tied for 9th in passing touchdowns. But the thing that sets Marcel Reed back is his ability to run. Marcel Reed not only can get out of the pocket, keep his eyes downfield, and deliver a strike when they need it, he can also run for some yards as well. 391 rushing yards through just 10 games, 6 rushing touchdowns. He is a two-dimensional dual threat quarterback. But there is a reason he is not number 1 in the Heisman odds, and that is because he has a completion percentage of just 61%, which is 78th in the country. He has 8 interceptions. Marcel Reed's biggest knock is that he is not safe with the ball. And not being safe with the ball is a pretty big knock. That is enough to make him not win the Heisman. But the Heisman is not just an SEC award. In fact, there's another conference that's producing very good players right now. But before we get to that, make sure to subscribe and like this video. It pushes the video further, and the goal of this channel is to grow it so I can give you guys more content. I love talking college football, love giving you guys content. The bigger we get this channel, the more content we can push out. So share this to your friends, like it, tell a friend about it, subscribe, do all of that. Let's get this channel going. Now, at the second best odds to win the Heisman this year, we have a quarterback out of the Big Ten, and that is Julian Sayin, the quarterback out of Ohio State. Ohio State, undefeated. Julian Sayin leading that undefeated team. That's always going to get you a bump in the Heisman vote. And not only that, but Julian Sayin is sitting at first in completion percentage in the country at 80% completion percentage. That is 7% better than anybody else in the country. And with that, he only has 4 interceptions on the year. That is being safe with the ball. Julian Sayin is sitting at 3rd in the country in passing touchdowns this year. And he has 6 games where he's thrown for over 300 yards. That is over half of his games where he has thrown for more than 300 yards. So that is insane. But going back to that completion percentage, 80%, that is even more insane. That is an unheard of high completion percentage. But the reason that he is not in first place in the Heisman odds is because he is 14th in total passing yards and 15th in passing yards per game. That's not good enough to win the Heisman, or at least not good enough to win the Heisman on its own. Julian Sayin is also the definition of a pocket passer. He is not mobile. He has had 20 rushing yards through 10 games and 0 rushing touchdowns. Not a runner in the slightest. Julian Sayin is more of a prototypical pocket passing quarterback that's not going to beat an edge around and pick up a first down with his legs. But first, in the Heisman odds after week 12, the guy that Vegas is saying is the most likely to win it is Fernando Mendoza. Now, Fernando Mendoza also leads an undefeated team. He's going to get a bump for that. Indiana is looking really good. Not only that, but he is first in the country in passing touchdowns with 30 passing touchdowns on the year. He is 3rd in completion percentage, 73%. Now, not as high as we see from Julian Sayin, not that high, but he's still 3rd in the country, which means there is only 2 guys that have a higher completion percentage in the entire country than Fernando Mendoza. Fernando Mendoza also only has 5 interceptions, 1 more than Julian Sayin, but he is safe with the ball. But there's really 3 things that I think could stop him from winning the Heisman, and that is his yards are not great. He is 16th in total passing yards, and that is a little deceiving because Indiana has played 1 more games than most people. They have a bye this week, which means he is 35th in the country in passing yards per game, and I don't think that's quite good enough to win the Heisman. If we're going to knock Julian Sayin for being 14th and 15th in those categories, we're going to knock Fernando Mendoza a little bit more, being 16th and 35th. And not only that, but Fernando Mendoza doesn't really have a Heisman moment. He has that last minute, 2-minute drive against Penn State, but he wasn't playing very good football for the first 58 minutes of that game. In fact, he only has 1 game where he has thrown for over 300 yards, and that's against Michigan State, a team not known for being a great team. In fact, Michigan State hasn't won a game since September. They started the year 3-0 and have lost every game they've played in since. And to be fair, Indiana's run game has been good. He hasn't been asked to throw for a ton of yards, but that's going to go into the Heisman voting. You look at guys like Caleb Williams, who was dragging his team along with him because he was putting up insane stats, and that's not Fernando Mendoza, and that's typically what your Heisman winner is going to be. So Fernando Mendoza is going to have to go out and have a Heisman moment in the entire game in their last game of the season. But regardless of the Heisman odds, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments who would have your vote for Heisman if you had a vote. If I had a vote, I'm going Julian Sayin. He is looking too good. He is too safe with the ball, and that 80% completion percentage is insane. And after you do that, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it to a friend. Like I said, the goal of this channel is to get it as big so we can deliver more content to you, and the bigger we get it, the more content we can deliver.